Around this subject, we have a lot of fun things to share, and we will begin with a little bit of history as to how our own species became telepathic and how we see you are in the process of doing the same, but in your own way. So, most of you may know, some of you may not, but we are going to share with you right now that we understand ourselves to be a hybrid race. We are the quote-unquote result of a hybridization program between what you understand to be the grace or a future offspin of your human race and your own human DNA as you understand yourselves today. The hybridization project resulted in us as a youngest species, you could say. Some of you may be familiar with the messenger being referred to as Bashar. He is a male member of the also hybrid society that has introduced themselves as Sassani. They are the third hybrid race. The fourth, and even closer to your human DNA, is the YahYel. We are the YahYel, or YahYel, to keep it short. So we are the youngest and therefore most similar looking, like you could say, genetically closest to you. We could actually walk on your street rather unnoticed were it not for the fact that if you saw any one of us, we would probably seem to beam light to you. Because our energy frequency literally radiates from us in your dimension. If we focus to the degree where we physicalize in your dimension, you would see us with a glow emanating from our skins. And that might give it away. But anyway, this is an energy frequency difference between us. We are physical. We understand ourselves to be physical, just like you. We're just on a higher wavelength, and therefore you cannot see us usually unless we put in quite a bit of effort, and we can make ourselves apparent, if relevant, for the observer or observers. As for now, you will find that most of these introductions are being done through the idea of our ships. Now, we don't really need our ships to introduce ourselves to you. We could just appear right in front of you. But for the sake of subtleness, you could say, the ships are a nice way to help most of you guys soothe into the idea that there is more than just what you understand to be on the face of your earth. And then at least you will have an indication as to where it comes from. Even though everything is here and now and everything simultaneously exists, and you are, you could say, source. You are all that is eventually. So what's, you could say, happening here is we are a dream that you have deeply buried within yourselves, that you have chosen to forget, and that you are allowing to come up and surface now. You are listening to us. We are, in a sense, dream fragments of your overall reality. You being eventually all that is. We exist within you, you exist within us. We dream each other up. And through this conversation, you may start to feel a little dream-like. Now, the future grays were a future offspin of your human race, like we said before, on their future version of Earth. Things had gone rogue, you could say, somewhat, to the degree where life on your Earth to them was no longer possible, so they had to move underground. The air was no longer breathable. They had really let their minds take over. Their hearts, you could say, had become extremely limited in their ability to feel, to sense, to be empathic. Their language, therefore, merged for practical reasons into one Earth language. The Greys spoke one united language on the face of the Earth, and you could call them in a sense telepathic, although they reached that state through the addition of technological implants and mechanical additions within their system, so that you could perhaps compare it to the idea of a beehive. There was an electric current. Perhaps you could make the analogy of a radio station that all of them were tuned into simultaneously. From that wavelength, speaking was no longer necessary, though they did have, you could say, their own language. That every grey on the face of the earth could speak, although it wasn't necessarily used as a spoken language, because the thought hive mind could be plugged into, and everybody was. So they would function effective, pragmatic, and it didn't have much to do with things that you still know on your timeline, such as poetry, or making a joke, or quoting a saying of a famous writer that you love. None of that was important to them. They just focused on the more scientific side of their evolution. And so these fragments disappeared from their language. Their language was purely to the point, as a matter of fact, you could say. So, hybrid races that came forth from the hybridization project between the greys and human, nowadays, species, you could say. We, as hybrids, were raised, as you may understand, partially by the greys. But the idea of the project was to bring the love back into their species, because they understood we can't go on like this. At some point they realized if we just keep on having the mind take over, everything around us will fall away. They started to see, eventually, through trial and error, that the universe will, you could say, call you back if you choose to believe that you can do without your heart, that you can do without love. And so they had manifested some sharp reflections into their reality, showing them exactly that. So you could say they hit the brakes and they decided to change course. And so they traveled back, quote unquote, in time, visited you, something that has been referred to in some, at least American scenes, as ET abductions. We call it visitations, and counter-visitations has a nicer ring to it, don't you think? And through these particular visitations, the idea of the hybridization project began. Now, it was their aim, and they understood they had to bring love back into their species, so that slowly but surely empathy would start to play a role again. But so our parents were the greys, and in our case, as YahYel, the younger hybrid races that came before us. Nonetheless, all the hybrids created in that way learned the ancient tongue of the greys, in which there are no puns, no jokes. Now you use puns and jokes in your language. And we're gonna get back to that and explain to you how that shows you you're moving towards the direction of telepathy. For us, since we were genetically engineered, you could say, to be more heart-oriented, we created ourselves to be a society that had instant telepathy from the start. So nobody needed to really explain these things to us. We didn't need to go really through a very long stretch journey of common language into a telepathic connection. We also did not have that type of agreement with all that is, with the universe, to go through that type of seeming disconnection, the illusion of separation, something that you may know you have signed up to quite a degree. And so the language journey is a part of that. Now, Despite the lack of puns, we are learning them from you right now through interactions such as these and through tuning in with translators and what you call channels, such as the one before you. We are picking up on these type of little tricks and jokes so that we can use them as well and understand you when you make them by the time that we start open contact, which will most likely be at a time and space, you could say, wherein Earth is just beginning to experiment with telepathy, but still in the children's shoes. So it will be important for us to speak your tongue when we introduce ourselves to the mass, you could say, society of your planet by then. Now, you guys, having signed up for all varieties of polarity, chose to also play with language in that way. Now, you could say that you have run many cycles of different types of languages and cultures on your face of your planet. Many cycles that are not even mentioned in what you call your common history, that you are not taught in your elementary schools. But to keep it simple, we will start from the history that you do get taught in your schools. And within these books, you may understand that some of the holy books are the oldest ones that you still have available on your planet. Biblical, Buddhistic, Sumerian scripts, down to hieroglyphs. And writings such as these contain strong references to a time in your history where you spoke, quote unquote, one tongue. Now, that type of speaking one tongue was referring to a telepathic connection, a telepathic awareness. In other words, you had that. You still have that. You are born with it. As a baby, you come in with that entire, you could say, bandwidth wide open and available to you. It is just because your parents don't believe that you can be that, they don't believe they are that, they haven't been raised that way, that they raise you as being not telepathic. They speak to you from day one. They speak to you before day one. And they imprint you as a little child with their conviction that this is the way to communicate. But a baby doesn't know the boundaries yet between sound being present and not being present. It gets entrained that way. When mommy says this, it means that. Eventually it clicks in. But the baby, still discovering its own limbs at some point, is one with the world around it. It is coming in fully open, you could say. Heart wide open, mind wide open, full on flowing connection. And because you are such a pure form of unconditioned love, you are that now, but it is something that you are very uninhibited, unfiltered as a child. That you, from that love and the love of your environment, the love of your family, the love for your parents, you adopt their ways because you understand intuitively it is how to connect. So your desire to be loved and to share your love makes you immediately, intelligently fine-tune your radio station to the energy frequency that they are projecting onto you, so that you fit in, so that you can speak, so that you can make it obvious that you want to be held, that you're thirsty, that you're hungry. And of course, first these are clumsy attempts, you could say, when you're looking from a much higher point of view. But eventually you fine-tune yourself very rapidly, very effectively, and by the age of 3, most of that fine-tuning has already been done. By the age of 7, we would say, you have in place so many filters that it could take decades to let that go. And this is what most of you are doing right now. We see lots of you are on that exciting journey of debunking one filter after another, because your generation is something else. And we understand that there are exceptions in earlier generations that are something else. but you know it, you feel it, you sense it, you understand. It has always felt like a little bit too tight of a costume. You've always known, I need a bigger jacket. There must be other ways to connect. You must have intuitively understood. Words do not necessarily reach to the depth, to the energy frequency that I'm longing for to connect to others with. Now, it is a sign, we would say, of any culture that has decided to use language at all, that chooses to use puns and sayings and phrases and definitely poetry. It is a clear sign that the species using language in that particular way is on their way to reunite in a telepathic manner. Because you see, if you were just all about the pragmatic point of view, a little bit more like the Greys were, you wouldn't use puns and you wouldn't really want to write a poem because it wouldn't matter. It was of no importance to you. It wouldn't be. But why is it? Why is it? Why do you read Rumi? Why does it stir your heart? Why do you feel sometimes that little words say more than many? Why is it sometimes that the beauty of one sound, one word in crazy order, arranged, can make more sense than long booklets that go into encyclopedian kind of explanations? Why can that be more effective to the heart? Why does that say actually eventually more to the mind? Because you're tuning in with that force, that unconditional love, that wide stream of warm arms that is supporting you all the time, the power of all that is, source creation itself. That's what you're plugging into when you're writing a poem. That's why we say all poets, all writers, also all directors and singers and artists and dancers, but we're having this talk about language right now. All poets, all writers, all word artists, all spoken word speakers. You are channelers. You channel yourself back to higher dimensional energy frequencies of language. You use your jokes, your puns. You use your sayings, your poems to bring something into language that the rational mind cannot bring into it alone. That pragmatic thinking doesn't invite you to add to language. So this is a spark of heart, a spark of fairy dust, if you so will. And so that's where you are now. And with meditating and your use of toning, more and more people feel called to do such things. Speaking of light languages, you're expanding far and far more than ever before in your known history, beyond what language practically was. And it is your way of exploring deeper and deeper layers of yourself so that you can understand other people deeper and deeper. Remember, we are a dream alive within you that you're waking up to. But first, you're waking up to the dreams that you are dreaming about each other. And when there's more harmony in your mutually shared dreams, that is when we come through more profoundly than this indirect version, you could say. Although this is what it looks like to the rational mind, we know we are having quite a direct connection with some of you in this room right now. It's something you feel. It's something you know. It doesn't have to be said. It doesn't need words anymore, now does it? And that is telepathy. It doesn't need words anymore. You just know. You're getting there. And with the fine-tuning of your language, amongst others through techniques such as non-violent communication, something that is becoming a little bit more popular on your earth today, you're getting most of all to get to know yourselves better. And the more you understand yourselves, the bigger your ability to empathize with others will be. So within your own dream, your self-created reality, you're getting to know yourself better through the seeming reflections of other people. And they trigger you and they push your buttons. And whatever emotional waves that creates within you is you getting to know your heart, your levels of empathy ability. And when you get to know that better and you're more self-secure in that and you don't feel attacked so much anymore with certain circumstances, the more you're showing your higher self, the universe, people around you, that you have an inner balance. And from that inner balance, more information can come. And from that inner balance, you will begin to communicate more easily with other people on that same wavelength. And this may feel like sheer telepathy. And you will find yourself able to think of a person and 5 minutes later they call you. Or you think of them and you receive an email the next day that starts with, I was thinking of you. And you may begin to wonder who was thinking of who first. But you're beginning to resonate on a wavelength that is already telepathic. Now, you have always been that. Remember, we said you are born this way. You've just been telling yourself for the longest of time that that wasn't true. And since belief systems create your experience of reality individually, subjectively, always for every single one of you, that is what determines how telepathic you are. So the more open you believe you can be, because you don't feel you need to defend yourself to certain energetic input anymore, based on not serving fear-based belief systems, old paradigm beliefs that you're actually done with, the more you feel you can let these distractions go, the more you will find this wide open space around you, where you begin to actually consciously now connect with your environment and all dimensions hiding within it. Now, this is what wanted to come through most at this moment regarding the idea of telepathy. But we're very enthusiastic to share more. If you may have any questions regarding this subject or any other, please be welcome for this dance of question and answer.